Today I'm going to tell you everything that you need to know about the brand new 2024 WRX Limited. Behind me is a brand new WRX Limited. Logan, who's been on the channel before, just recently picked this up as a brand new car, and so we want to take the opportunity to tell you guys all about it. But before we do, my name is Gray and this is Living Like Gray. If you guys are new here, we like to make videos about cars, especially our own cars like this WRX. So if that sounds cool to you, be sure to subscribe down below so don't miss any of the awesome videos that we have coming out in the near future. With that said, let's go ahead and get into it. Starting at the front, you get this lower half of black plastic, which you're going to find all around the car, which a lot of people complain about, but it's really actually functional, which we'll go into more here in a little bit. But moving further up the bumper, you get this gunmetal gray grille, which some people really like. It is able to be changed out in the aftermarket though, so if you do want to black out the grille or do some more aggressive grille, you're able to do that in the aftermarket. Moving further up the car, you do get a functional hood scoop right here, which is for the intercooler for the turbo. It's basically a ram air intake that helps cool down the oil for the turbo. Moving back along the side here, you do get the 18-inch alloy wheels. These are going to come on every single model except the base model. Now, these do have the standard steel brakes. If you want Brembo brakes, you're going to have to go up to the track ready model or the GT model, or you're going to have to do them in the aftermarket. Moving along the side of the car, you're going to see a lot more of this black plastic. Now, you do get kind of a functional vent here that allows some of that turbulent air out from the wheel well here, which I think is a nice little touch. However, I'm not a huge fan of the look of this black plastic, but it is functional. Subaru has basically said that this is kind of meant to be like a rally car. It's meant to be rugged and for taking off-road as well as driving on the street. So they've given you this plastic to protect your paint in areas where you're most likely to get a rock chip, like the front lower half of your bumper, or right by your wheels on the wheel wells, along with moving fully alongside the lower side skirt here. Now, one of the interesting things about this black plastic is you can't really tell unless you look really close up to it. It's basically like this tiny little hexagon pattern that you see here. It basically is for aerodynamics, is what Subaru has said. It helps the air to flow similar to like a golf ball. I don't know how that works. I am not an avid golfer, nor do I design aerodynamics on the side of cars, so I really couldn't tell you how that worked, but that's the official Subaru statement for the decorative pattern on the side of all of the black plastic throughout the car. Moving even further back to the rear of the car, this is where some major changes have taken place from the previous generation. You get these kind of more triangular taillights. These look almost like a Civic is what everybody's talking about, and it looks more like a Honda taillight than a Subaru taillight. I actually kind of like the taillights. It adds a little bit more sleekness to the car. The thing that I'm not a huge fan of, that a lot of people aren't a fan of, is the lower half right here, this kind of diffuser area. It's not, in my opinion, the best look, but I could see maybe modifying it, maybe upgrading it. It is a huge area for, it's got a lot of potential, I'll say. So if you're gonna be off-roading the car, I think this is probably a necessity. It really does protect the rear of your car from any rocks or mud or debris hopping up from those rear tires and damaging the rear of your car. A couple things to point out here on the rear is you do get this rear duckbill wing on the trunk. Now, it's not super aggressive. Again, this is something that you can change out, but it does help with a little bit of downforce in the rear. Another piece that I just noticed that I really do like is this black trim piece that runs through the middle of the trunk from one taillight to the other, as well as this black trim piece actually goes around the emblem here. It's little details like that that really show you that they've spent a lot of time designing this car. Now, moving further down the bumper here onto the black plastic part, you do get a little bit of what looks like it is kind of a diffuser here. These fins don't really make the most sense to me. I don't know if they're just for looks or if they are functional. But the coolest part of the bumper right here is actually the exhaust. It's the quad exit exhaust, which Subaru WRXs are known for. I'm glad that they kept that with this generation. Now, inside the trunk, you do have quite a bit of storage space. This is a very practical car, I would say. There's some really cool features in the trunk though that I do want to point out. Now, again, a lot of storage space. You can fit a couple of luggage bags here or a full trunk of groceries. But the cool things that I really wanted to point out is this right here. This is actually a grocery bag handle. It allows you to put groceries here that need to remain upright or that you don't want slinging around in the back of your trunk, this acts as a handle to hang things on, which I think is a really cool feature. Another feature that is right here, that's this little leather bag here. It is a cargo net that can unfold and basically hold stuff in the back of your trunk. And then when you don't need it, it conveniently folds up into a little pouch. Again, it's the little things like that that shows that Subaru has spent a lot of time on this car. Now, as we move to the interior, one of the things that I actually want to point out from the interior is you can see it better from the exterior. There is a speaker here, which is, I'm not sure if it's necessarily a subwoofer, but you do get a very large Harman Kardon speaker that is going to help with that surround sound in your WRX. Now, we're going to go ahead and start with the back seat, working our way forward. So this one, since it is the Limited, you do get the leather and Alcantara seats, which are really, really, really nice seats. These are the kind of seats that you pay extra money for in other cars. Now, I'd say it's worth getting the Limited just for these seats, as well as you get a couple other trim features like this carbon fiber wrap right here. I'm not the biggest fan of a carbon fiber wrap. I would just rather have actual carbon fiber. But for $39,000, you're not really going to be getting much actual carbon fiber on a car. Now, in the back seat, you do get a couple other features, such as an armrest that folds down that shows some cup holders, as well as a USB-C and a USB charger right in the middle there. Now, moving into the front seat, this is where a lot of this stuff has improved from the previous generation. Again, you get these Harman Kardon sound system, these speakers down here, but little areas like this trim piece here is just really beautifully done. It's stuff like that that you're really not gonna get on the previous generations. They've spent a lot of time making this feel like a more refined vehicle than other models of WRXs. Now, inside the car, you get this flat bottom steering wheel that helps you get in and out. That's kind of that race feel that you're gonna get from the WRX that you're not gonna get from like the Impreza or the Crosstrek or the other Subaru models. We're back with the fake carbon fiber here and then in the door trim as well with the WRX logo right there. You get the standard 6-speed transmission. This is basically the same shifter that came in the previous WRX. Very reminiscent, same shift knob, same reverse lockout mechanism, but we'll get more on how the transmission feels here in a little bit. Now, one of the biggest changes here is you have this big infotainment screen. Now, you're gonna get this in the Limited, but not necessarily all the other models. I think this is a big improvement from the previous generation. However, I still think Subaru has quite a long ways to go. To me, it feels like Subaru hasn't caught up to other manufacturers in regards to their heads unit and their infotainment system. Now, a couple other things that I do want to touch on while I am in here is you do have a sunroof in the Limited that you might not actually get in other models, as well as one of the biggest features that people have been dying to have on a WRX or even just any manual Subaru is eyesight. This car does have eyesight, unlike other Subarus with a manual transmission. In this one, it comes standard on all models. So if safety is your concern, this really checks all of the boxes on safety, reliability, and ruggedness. But you don't want to just hear me talk about it. You want to see me actually drive it. Let me give you my thoughts of what it feels like to be behind the wheel of the brand new WRX. So now we're inside the car. We're gonna go ahead and go for a drive, but my initial impressions of sitting inside this car are really, really good, especially compared to the previous generation WRX. You get a big infotainment screen right here, and since this is Limited, you do get the push button start. It really feels refined in here as an upgraded compared to the previous generation. It feels smoother, it feels more like a comfortable car than a sport car, which some of you may really like and some of you might not like as much. But I'm gonna kind of leave that up to you guys. Let's go ahead and start this car. And I actually wanna show you guys, I'm not gonna put my seatbelt on just yet. I'm gonna show you guys one of the worst features of this car. Now that the car's running, let's say you just need to move it around the parking lot, maybe move it up and down your driveway, and you don't wanna throw your seatbelt on. Or let's say you have something heavy in the passenger seat that weighs about as much as a person, and you don't wanna seatbelt it in. Well, let's say you go ahead and just kinda start driving here. You're gonna get a fasten seatbelt warning. Now that's not too bad, right? We've only driven a few feet, it's not too annoying, but soon, it's gonna get so loud that you won't probably be able to hear me talking. And like that. And you cannot stop it. It is very, very loud and very, very annoying. And it will even happen if you're in the back seat of the car or if you have something heavy on one of the seats. So only way to fix it is by throwing a seatbelt on. That might not be that big of a deal. You're probably saying, Grayson, why not just wear your seatbelt? Trust me, there are more times than you think where you're not gonna wear your seatbelt to move the car about 10 feet or just up and down the driveway, and that kicks on instantly. Now, there are some issues with like door alarms and stuff like that, but really, to me, that is the worst feature of the 2024 WRX. So far, average in this car, we've got about 18, almost 19 miles per gallon, which isn't too bad for a 2.4 liter turbo, but it's not great. It's definitely gonna be better than a V8 or some other larger displacement alternative, but some four cylinders, you're typically buying them for gas mileage, not necessarily power. The WRX is a little different. You buy it for the power that you can get out of it, rather than just the gas mileage. Now, speaking of power, this does have a 2.4 liter four-cylinder turbo motor. That turbo does provide a little bit extra power and a little bit better gas mileage in the low end. Now, there are downsides to that turbo. The biggest downside, however, isn't really the turbo, it's the RPM range. The red line for the WRX is 6,200 RPM, whereas opposed to other models, it goes up to 7,200, maybe even 7,500 on the higher end models. Because of this, at low speeds, your turbo is not going to kick in until about 5,200 RPM, which means you only get about 1,000 RPM left of turbo. However, at the higher speeds, that's when this car really starts to come alive. This WRX is built way better than most other Subarus, where at high speeds, they kind of feel like they start to fall apart. This really opens up at higher speeds and is really comfortable going 80 plus miles an hour. Not that I endorse doing that on public roads, but if you hit a 90, 100 mile per hour speed limit area, this car could handle it just fine. One of the biggest improvements in this generation as opposed to the last generation is the torque dip. If you guys are familiar with the previous generation WRXs and Subaru BRZs, they had a massive torque dip right around 3,500 to 4,000 RPM. The reason for this was not necessarily because the engines were built that way, it was in the tuning. To meet emission standards in other countries such as Japan, they had to add a massive torque and power dip that basically saved on gasoline, but you could feel whenever you would hit the gas. Since these new ones are not sold in those countries that have that emission standard, these don't have that massive torque dip, and it's a very nice linear power curve all the way from the bottom to the top of the RPM range. Pair that with that turbo, and this thing really just comes alive. It is so comfortable and easy to drive. The manual, the turbo, this is a perfect car for a daily driver that you can take on the track or even off-road and enjoy. So I'm gonna go ahead and take this down the high-speed Dallas North Tollway, where this thing really opens up and kind of shows you what it's built for. Now, while we're doing that, I do want to go through the different models that you can get of the WRX. There's 5 different models that you can get, different trim levels that is. There's the base model, the premium, the limited, which is what we're in now, the TR, and then there is the GT, which is the highest trim level you can get. Now, the base model is the most affordable option that you can get. On the base model, you lose a lot of the nice amenities and some of the bigger features that you get with the higher end models. The main ones that you're really gonna see and feel are the screen, the infotainment screen. It basically splits into 2 different screens rather than one big infotainment screen. Now, for the base model, you also don't get the upgraded 17-inch alloy wheels. You just get the standard Subaru wheels that you see on pretty much any of their other sport cars. With that, you're gonna get cloth seats and really lose some of the other creature comforts like heated seats as well. Now, when you lose the heated seats, you also lose the electric 10-way adjustable seats. You have to go to the manual seats, which if you're going for weight reduction, maybe that's the way you want to go. You also don't get keyless access or push to start, which you get in the higher models. That starts around the limited. Now, if you like cup holders in the back of the car, if you want your friends to be able to bring drinks in your car, sadly, you just can't do that with the base model. You have to get a higher end because you lose your cup holders and your armrest in the back seat whenever you get the base model. Now, when you lose that infotainment setup, you're also gonna lose your Harman Kardon speakers. So if audio is an important factor to you, then you might want to get the higher trim levels. Now, one of the features that Subaru owners have been wanting for a long time in their manual cars, and pretty much all the cars that Subaru is really known for, is Subaru EyeSight. It's a protective equipment with blind spot monitoring, as well as the forward brake sensor, where basically if the person in front of you brakes really hard, it will slam on the brakes for you. Previously, you haven't been able to get that in a manual at all in any of their cars, let alone all of their models. Now it comes standard in every single WRX model, whether it is a manual or an automatic. Now, moving up to the premium, you're going to gain a few more features from the base model, such as the 18-inch wheels that you couldn't get on the previous generation. You're going to get the bigger infotainment display. You're also going to get push to start, which every single model after that also comes with a push to start available. You're going to get auto up and down windows, where you can just hit it and it will go up and then back down. Now, in the premium, you still don't get the big infotainment display. You still get the two separate little displays. Now, moving on to the limited, this is where you get a lot of the big jumps, such as the big infotainment screen display, the nicer interior with the Alcantara and leather seats. Now, in the limited, you also get access to a sunroof that comes standard. With the premium, it is an extra cost option that you can add, but the limited comes with a sunroof. So if you like your sunroof, you can get either a premium or a limited, but it comes standard with the limited. So you also get the Harman Kardon stereo system. So again, if your music is really important to you, you're going to want to get the limited with the upgraded stereo. Now, above the limited, you get access to the TR and GT models. Both of these models will have stiffer suspension, it'll have Brembo brakes, Recaro seats, and no sunroof available for that extra weight reduction. The only difference between the TR and the GT models, the TR standing for track ready, is it is a manual option, whereas the GT Grand Tour is an automatic option. Depending if you want the automatic or the manual, that's going to be the main difference between those two trim levels. Now, one of the biggest disappointments of Subaru this year is the fact that there's no STI model for any of the WRXs recently. Instead, that's been kind of replaced by the TR and the GT, which it really isn't doing enough to make up for what the STI was. The STIs have been known for their racing heritage, the extra power from the bigger motor and the bigger turbo, the stiffer suspension, the big wing. It's something that you lose whenever you get these new WRXs, no matter what model you get. And in my opinion, the TR and the GT, they're just not up to the challenge that was what the STI was. In my opinion, Subaru not offering an STI, a Subaru Technica Institute WRX, doesn't make any sense, because there is obviously some sort of market for it, because everybody's been begging for it, and STI is still around. They make GT cars for the Subaru race team. It's not like they just abolished STI from existence, they just stopped offering it to the public. Logan bought this car instead because he wanted to put his foot down and not agree with Subaru that the TR is a good replacement. Logan would have bought an STI if it existed. The TR and the GT aren't selling very well because they aren't what people wanted. They wanted the big wing, the louder exhaust, the stiffer suspension, everything that came with an STI. Now, I'm still holding out some sliver of hope that Subaru will eventually come out with an STI model of this car way down the line as maybe the final generation. And when that happens, I hope that Logan trades this one in for that STI, and I have a feeling that he probably will at some point. Now, my only concern with that is that if they do it down the line, it might be an electric model. I'd be okay if it was some sort of hybrid that combined a gas engine with an electric motor to produce an insane amount of power with a controllable handling, but sadly, the way that things are going, I'm a little concerned that if an STI ever comes out, it's probably going to be fully electric. That means that this car, the 2024 Limited WRX, may be the swan song of the Subaru manual WRX. Because in my opinion, the Limited is better than the TR. Some people may disagree with me for that, but I'm gonna stand by that statement because you get comfort and drivability with this model without the massive price tag of the TR and GT models. But with that said, let's go ahead and get back to how this car feels. And it really does feel smooth, elegant, something that you would enjoy to drive every day, but then you could take back out to the track and drive it around like a maniac and then drive it home. One of the biggest impressions that this thing has left on me is how smooth that the transmission and clutch feel compared to the previous generation. The previous generation felt stiffer. Even the lower end models, the Limited, the Premium, the base model, they all felt, as well as the STI, they felt stiffer. They didn't feel as comfortable to drive as this is. And the clutch was heavier. The transmission was a little harder to get into gear. This makes me feel like I can easily heel toe shift into corners and then come out with the power band that I need to accelerate. Now that beeping was eyesight kicking in because I was accelerating up to a stopped car in front of me. So that is one of those slight annoying beeping noises. So for people of my generation, this car likes to yap. It likes to talk to you. It likes to tell you what you're doing wrong. And as every single time that you do something wrong, it's gonna talk to you. It's gonna make you feel like you're the worst driver on the planet. One of the other things that this thing has that I'm not the biggest fan of, but some people may like if you like texting and driving, is lane assist. This does have a lane assist where it will detect if you start to go out of the lane without your blinker, and it will forcibly push you back into the lane. Now again, the handling of this isn't going to be as stiff as the TR models, but it is stiff enough, I'd say. If you wanted to upgrade it, I'd say that would be a good place to start modifying your car, is maybe do some coilovers or some lowering springs, get a slightly stiffer suspension if you're not a huge fan of the body roll that comes with this car. Another thing that I would modify as well is probably the exhaust. At cold start and idle, this thing actually sounds really good, but as soon as you start getting on it, you don't really hear that Subaru rumble that you want to hear with this car, or really anything. It doesn't have the volume to tell you what's going on with the car whenever you're shifting through the gears. So if you did want to go modify this car, there are plenty of options. You can do cosmetic mods, you can do an exhaust, you can do suspension. Now as for the tune and engine power, you really get quite a bit up from its predecessor that did have that massive torque dip. So a tune isn't really necessary off the bat like I would have recommended with other generations or other models of Subarus. Now the biggest difference between the 2024 model and the 2023 model is the brakes. Subaru upgraded the brakes. They give you a little bit stiffer of brakes that are a little more responsive as compared to the last year's model. A lot of the complaints were that the brakes were squishy, they weren't responsive enough, and so they went ahead and fixed that on this newer model. Another thing that they kind of touched on was they upgraded the infotainment system so it's not as laggy. That was another complaint that a lot of people had. Still a Subaru infotainment screen, so there's going to be some lag there. That's not really what they're known for. They're kind of known for having laggy infotainment. So if that's going to be a problem for you, then this probably isn't the car for you. But overall, who this car is for is, I would say, someone that needs something that's practical, affordable, but is also sporty as well. This is a great option for someone that wants something that's reliable, easy to drive, but you can pick up the kids from school. You can bring your friends, you can pick up the groceries, and you're not gonna break the bank with some big V8 or some Escalade. As well as you can take this on track and really enjoy how this car feels. After driving a little bit on the highway, you can really feel the difference between just driving around town. It is at home there, it's at peace there. It's somewhere that, it's really where this car thrives, is at those higher speeds. Subarus really are known for their ruggedness rather than anything else, which this thing can also do that. It has the fender guards, it has the stuff that would allow you to take it off-road and down a dirt path, go camping with it, and then hop right back on the road, go to the racetrack, and have a fun track day. You get versatility as well as utility and reliability with this car. Now, if you're watching this and you're about 16 years old and you're trying to convince your parents that this is the car for you, I would say I would agree with you. This has a 5-star safety rating, as most Subarus do. With the eyesight, just makes it even more safe. The fact that you can get it in a manual still, and it is affordable you get great gas mileage with this car. This, I would say, is a perfect car for someone who's 16 years old and getting their first car, or someone who's in college and getting their second car, or someone who just had a family and is getting their third or fourth or fifth car. This is really a versatile car. It can fit so many roles at a price point that makes sense. Now, the last thing I want to touch on is the people that want to push power out of this car, the people that want to make it a race car like the old WRXs. This generation, this platform is a lot easier to push power out of. It's easier to tune. You get a 2.4 liter FA24 rather than a 2-liter FA20 that was in the previous generation. With that, this generation has the more reliable motor. It's built to be tuned. It's something that you can really get more out of this motor than the previous generations. So if you want to go build a race car, this is a good platform to do it. If you want to keep it stock and you want something that's going to be reliable and easy to drive, this is the platform to do it. Again, versatility is the name of the game with this car, as well as that utility fact that you get with the 4 doors as well. At first, I thought I wasn't going to like this car. I like the VA model more than the VB, which is this. I thought I would choose that any day over this. And now that I've driven this extensively, I would say it's quite the opposite. This is the WRX that you should get. And for the people that say it looks funny or looks weird, that can be fixed. If you don't like the look of it, you're not looking hard enough at aftermarket options. All WRXs look a little funny. Every single generation of WRX looks a little goofy. This is just the newest one in that line. Every single time that Subaru releases a new WRX, the Subaru community hates it. But every single time the next generation has come out, people fall in love with the previous generation. I think that's going to happen with this car. This really is the best that Subaru has done so far. And while I hate to admit that, it's just a great platform for so many things, whether you want to go off-roading or on-road or on the track, or if you're just dailying it around town. Now, the only concern that I do have with this car, and it's probably the biggest concern that you should have with a car, is oil starvation. When I say that, that's a very scary thought. That's how a motor is seized. That is how a motor is done for good. This car has a very small oil pan. For a turbo 4-cylinder, it has a 4.8 quart capacity of oil. Whereas my Subaru BRZ, which is a 2-liter 4-cylinder with no turbo, takes 5.7 quarts of oil. So oil starvation, especially around a track where the oil is going to be moving to one side, back to the other side, oil starvation becomes a very large concern with this car. Now, that is fixable in the aftermarket. You can get a couple of things, and if you are going to push power out of this car, you need to get an air oil separator. That should fix your problem, and then if you want to go an extra step further, you can even get a larger oil pan. Now, both of these things will void your warranty with Subaru, so you're not going to get a free replacement engine if you do blow it up, but I would say avoiding blowing up your motor in the first place is probably more important to you than blowing up your motor and getting a replacement one. But that's the amount of risk that you want to take as an owner, and something that you should be considering, that when you buy one of these cars, whether it's new or used, make sure that oil starvation isn't going to be a problem on this car, or hasn't been a problem on a used one. Now, if you are 16 and you're looking at this car, this is a message directly to you. Subarus are notoriously fragile, or at least their motors are, if you don't do regular oil changes. So if you're gonna get one of these cars, you need to do regular oil changes and keep up with that, or else you do run the risk at a certain amount of mileage. You could run the risk of blowing a head gasket, you can run the risk of spinning a bearing or damaging rods, or something that could really basically total your car and seize your motor. So for my young guys out there that are trying to convince their parents to get this, maybe a good deal would be you do all the oil changes every 6 months, and they'll get you the car as a sign of maturity and responsibility. So overall though, I think this is a great platform, and I'm pleasantly surprised at what Subaru has done here. Let's go ahead and pull over, wrap up the video, and I'll give you guys my final thoughts on this car. Overall, I really enjoyed this brand new WRX more than I thought I was going to. I've liked the past generations, but this one really was a pleasant surprise. There are a lot of amenities that come on this model that just aren't around on the previous generations. I would say if you're looking at a WRX, definitely consider, go test drive, go try out the new WRX. I was really shocked at everything that this car has to offer. But that's pretty much gonna do it for this video. If you guys have any more questions or comments about the new WRX, please leave it in the comments down below. We'd love to know what you guys wanna hear about when we make videos about this car. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Please subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.